You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 25. This week on the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, we're going to have our second part of our interview with John Devney, Delta Waterfowl Vice President of U.S. Policy, and we're going to profile the Hooded Merganser. All right, welcome to the 25th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We are your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. You can find us at www.hpoutdoors.com, and we're also on all the major social networking sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've recently got on there, so if you're an Instagram user, check us out there. And for all the Facebook users out there, you can join us in our HP Outdoors Waterfowl listener group, and it's a closed group where we've got some guys in there that listen to the show, and we just kind of talk waterfowl hunting and random stuff about non-waterfowl topics and everything else. Just kind of another way to sort of get to know us a little better and chat with some of the other guys that listen to the show. So check that out if you're so inclined. One of the guys that you will find in that chat room, putting up all kinds of ridiculous banter, is Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, man?
This is coming out Monday, so, we record a little early, and we're going through Valentine's Day this weekend. So, just throwing it out there. If you guys messed up and didn't do anything this weekend, you still have time. I think you can make amends with the wife. So, go out and do that. But yeah, I do enjoy the listeners group, and like Trav always says, I'm just changing subjects all the time, so just be ready for random comments and changes of ways. That's what I do.
Yeah, that is what you do. And speaking of Valentine's Day, is there a worse holiday?
It's pretty bad.
Seriously, whoever decided that this was a good idea is just an evil person. Literally all they do is just set guys up for failure. Yeah. And I don't feel real good about that.
I think a woman invented it.
So, I'm sure. I'm so sure of that. It's not even fun. Yeah. Yeah, as we speak, I did all my Valentine's Day shopping today, actually. Went to the listeners group and asked for recommendations and stuff. So, got that squared away, and, hoping my wife likes her gift and everything else. So, but like you said, if you drop the ball there, you still got some time. Chicks always love a gift, even if it's a little bit late. So go ahead and get that squared away. But this week on the show, Dan, we're going to have our second part of our interview with John Devney, Delta Waterfowl Vice President of U.S. Policy. And last week, we talked with John about, a lot of conservation, regulation type stuff, and pretty lengthy interview, so we broke it up into two parts, and this week's part is quite a bit shorter than last week's. And this week we sort of talk about more habitat management and, get into some tips and things that you as a landowner can do to maybe hold water on your property or help attract ducks. So, you're a landowner, I know that, we asked a lot of questions that guys from our listeners group, wanted to know, but, I think it's a good conversation to have with him about what you can do if you have a little pond or, a couple of small ponds on your property, what you can do to, help attract and hold ducks on your farm.
Yeah, we have 100 acres here, and we have a lot of just wet areas, and there's nothing I want to do more than to timber a couple parts out and just make ponds and attract water, and, just something I really, really want to do. So if I can rent a dozer and, maybe take some tips from him, I might be doing that in the future here.
Yeah, and I know we've talked to you about you doing that for a long time, and that's the American dream, man. Walk out the back door and be able to, smash some ducks. So I hope you guys get the opportunity to do that. So we're going to talk to John about some of the things you can do as a landowner to help attract ducks to your farm. And then we're also going to profile the Hooded Merganser this week, which is, a duck that we see a lot of up here in our neck of the woods. And, don't shoot a whole bunch of them, but, you see a lot of them around, and, some guys shoot more of them than others, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the meat of the show, I wanted to just touch on a couple little things that have been kind of going on here with us and sort of share that with everybody. The first being that we discussed this in our listeners group, but we've started an affiliate program through our website with Cabela's, and what that basically is more of a full disclosure on our part. We've got a relationship with them now that if you were to choose to go through our website to do any kind of shopping with Cabela's, we would get a small commission based on your purchase at no additional cost to you, our listener. So in reality, what it is it's just, it's an opportunity for us to generate a little bit of revenue to help support the show and, cover some of the costs that we have with this. So if you're so inclined, anybody that were to go, shopping at Cabela's, if you're looking to do that, if you're so inclined, we'd appreciate you coming through our website and, clicking on one of the Cabela's banners and stuff like that. And it would help us out, and it's no additional cost to you. So those are there, and we wanted to just make sure that there's a full disclosure, for that stuff on our regard. And shoot, I know that, when I should do my shopping at Cabela's, I'll go through that and get a little bit back to help the show as well. So that's the first thing.
And also, I was going to say, Bison Coolers, they're giving a discount to our listeners with, I think it was just HP Outdoors, correct?
Yeah, HP
as a discount code.
HP Outdoors is the discount code there with Bison.
So go and get a Kohler. They're pretty amazing. I always have mine in the back of my truck, even though it's going to be hitting -12 this weekend here. But it's always in there, and always have cold drinks in there for whatever the season.
Yeah, it's a $15 discount on any of the hard side coolers that they offer there. So, helps you out with shipping, that kind of stuff. But nice little offer there for Bison Coolers for our listeners. The other thing I wanted to mention, speaking of listeners, Dan, prior to this episode that we'll be releasing on Monday, as you mentioned, we have surpassed the 25,000 download mark for the show. And that's kind of a big deal for us. I mean, when you start a podcast, you have no idea who wants to hear what it is that you're going to talk about, and if they're going to like you as a person, and you're listening to you on the show, and everybody has those fears of what's going to happen, that kind of thing. And to know that our show's been downloaded over 25,000 times from literally around the globe, it's pretty cool, and it's fun to see, and we look forward to many more. But I think 25,000 is a pretty good milestone for us.
Yeah, and it's we were talking before we got on here, and it's probably by the time this airs, it'll be over 26,000. So it is growing, and like you said, it is around the world, and we have guys in our listeners group from Australia, which they said that their season's going to be starting, and it's going to be 105 degrees there on their opening day of duck.
Unreal.
Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So good luck to them, and I hope his wife isn't listening to this, but he said that he's giving her a weekend at home for Valentine's Day.
Heck of a guy, right?
I was still laughing about that one, but yeah. So anyway, 108 degrees or 105 degrees, whatever it is, I'd maybe order a Bison Kohler from Brewed Outdoors and have some cold water there while you're shooting ducks. $15 off.
Yeah. So all good stuff on that front. We've mentioned a lot of interaction through the Facebook group. We encourage everyone to come over there and chat with us there. If you prefer to stay up with us in other ways, you can sign up for our newsletter right there on our website at hpoutdoors.com. Go to the podcast page, and on the right-hand side there, you've got an opportunity where you can sign up for our newsletter. And we don't push out a ton of stuff, but we do try to make it informative, and worthwhile information when we do send those out. We're not trying to fill up your inbox with a bunch of spam and that kind of stuff. So you can go that route, or you can call us on our HP Outdoors hotline, 724-609-FOWL, 724-609-3695. You can call us, leave us a message with a question or a comment about the show, and you never know. We may end up using that on the show, and you may hear yourself on here. All right, Dan, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the show and start it off with this week's duck profile, which is the Hooded Merganser.
All right, the Hooded Merganser, which I actually shot a very pretty hoodie this past fall, but the length, the male and the female are about 17, 18 inches and right around the same weight at 1.5 pounds. And the Hooded Merganser is the smallest of the 3 merganser species in North America. The male Hooded Merganser, they have a large white crest surrounded by black. The top and the head and neck and back are all black, and the chest, breast, and belly are white. Wavy black lines can be seen on the sides and flanks. The hind back, rump, and tail are dark brown. And they have a long, narrow, serrated bill that is black. And their iris is a bright yellow, and the legs and feet are dull yellow. And the females, they have a gray-brown head and neck and a reddish-brown crest. They have a gray neck, the chest, sides, and flanks, and brownish-black dominates their back, rump, and tail. And the upper bill is a black-edged with orange, and the lower bill is yellow. And the legs and feet are greenish in color, and the iris is brown. And we'll talk about the breeding a little bit, which something that I did today was look at their mating ritual on YouTube. And if you haven't seen it, that's something that you should probably go ahead and Google and watch on YouTube, because it's pretty interesting how they just jerk their necks around and everything. It's just cool to watch. But their breeding. Hooded Mergansers breed from southeastern Alaska, central BC, and southwestern Alberta, southwestern Oregon, central Idaho to northwestern Montana, and from central Saskatchewan to Nova Scotia, south to Kansas, northern Louisiana, and northern Georgia. And they prefer a forested wetland system where they nest in tree cavities or nest boxes, and they lay an average of 9 to 11 eggs.
You really are a sap for Valentine's Day, man. It's got you looking at the breeding ritual of the Hooded Merganser. Jeez.
You too.
That's pretty intense. I joked in the listeners group that Valentine's Day in your house is like an episode of, clip from The Notebook. I didn't know that it was that serious, but whew. Anyway, the migration and wintering patterns for the Hooded Merganser. Of the 3 species of mergansers in North America, the hooded is the only one restricted to the continent. They prefer forested wetlands, brackish areas, tidal creeks, things like that are preferred wintering habits. The Hooded Merganser will winter along the Pacific, Atlantic, and Gulf coasts, mainly in southeastern Alaska to the northern Baja California region. And they'll also winter in the New England, down to Florida, west to northern Mexico. We get tons of them here in Virginia. We see a lot of them. And what I was surprised to see is that the majority of the wintering Hooded Mergansers occur in the Mississippi flyway. And I was just shocked by that, by the amount that we see here in our neck of the woods. So they probably see quite a few out there that way. As far as population is concerned, the Hooded Merganser are most common in the Great Lakes region. Not a surprise to me there. And the current information suggests a stable and possibly increasing population in some areas. But the data on the population size and status are difficult due to the sensitive nature of the species. So it's tough to get good counts on them. But historically, populations have suffered, from a loss of habitat. As far as feeding habits for the Hooded Merganser, they dive in freshwater and feed on small fish, crayfish, and other crustaceans and aquatic insects. The Hooded Merganser is not known to be a good tasting duck, so a lot of guys don't even harvest mergansers. But the Hooded Merganser, like you said, is a very, very pretty bird. Makes a great mount. Some guys will harvest them and feed them, grill them up and cook, feed them for the dog and that kind of thing. Do your research in the area that you're hunting before you go that route with the Hooded Mergansers. Some areas, I know based on the water quality and things of that nature, the mercury levels in Hooded Mergansers can be quite high and can be dangerous to humans, but also to your dog and your other pets. So before you go that route, just do a little research on your area and see if it's recommended that you don't eat them. But, there's lots of them to shoot at, and, they have a lower bag limit than, the common mergansers and that kind of thing. I believe in our area you can only shoot 2 hooded mergansers in a daily bag limit. So I don't think I've ever shot 2 in one hunt, and I'm not even sure I've shot 2 in my entire life, to be honest with you. I tend to pass on them, but anyway, Hooded Merganser is a very, very pretty bird, and that's your profile for this week. All right, Dan. So knocked out our Hooded Merganser profile, and I do recall that one that you shot this fall, and I think it was during that cold strap in November, wasn't it? You had snow on the ground up there early in the year, and it was like a pre-morning hunt or something like that, or a pre-work hunt, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, we actually, it had to be November, but we had to break a little bit of ice that was on the shore on Pima tuning and got out there. So there were big ice chunks floating around.
Yeah, well, we took a couple this year, and the guys that I hunt with here in Virginia, and they're a very, very pretty bird, make a really great mount, just a unique duck. And like I said, we see them a lot around here, all over the place. So lots more information online about the Hooded Merganser if you're interested in checking that out. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more, Dan, about our second part of the interview here with John Devney of Delta Waterfowl. I just want to reiterate the fact that Delta Waterfowl is an organization that's for hunters, made up of hunters that realize that although protecting, waterfowl and waterfowl habitat is critical, is equally as critical as protecting our rights to pursue that game and, have access to property to pursue those that game, and, regulations that are fair and things of that nature. So, not all organizations out there advocate on behalf of the hunter as strongly as Delta Waterfowl does. So I don't know if that's known by everybody or if it's well known, but for me, that's a really, really big thing. And I said it last week. It's really, I'm really glad to know that there's someone in the ring fighting on behalf of the hunter. And I'm more than happy to ship them my membership fees every week or every year. And I know you recently became a Delta member, correct?
I did. And actually put a picture up on Instagram of the hat that I received. But like you said, and I don't want to get into anything because, like with Ducks Unlimited, just because any organization that is out there, which I'm also a member of DU, but just Delta is fighting for the hunter. So, you could have all the property in the world, but if you don't have the right to hunt, then what's it worth? So Delta definitely is a great cause towards that.
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying was not in any way a slight on Ducks Unlimited. I'm a Ducks Unlimited member, and I have been for years. And my point was, I don't know if it's commonly known that amongst, waterfowl hunters and things of that nature that, all of these conservation organizations are not created equal, and they all have slightly varied missions of what they're trying to accomplish. Delta Waterfowl chooses to make, hunters' rights and advocating on behalf of the hunter a significant part of their mission. Delta Waterfowl primarily focuses on the conservation of wetlands, and habitat management, which is fantastic because obviously, when we do these surveys every week, these profiles of these population or these duck profiles, rarely do we talk about a duck that's having population issues. Usually they're way above their long-term average, and year over year they're seeing growth and that kind of thing. And that is a result of the hard work, the people at DU and Delta and all them put in. So not a slight on Delta Water or on Ducks Unlimited at all. If you see me driving down the road, you're going to see a Ducks Unlimited sticker on my back window, that kind of stuff. Very supportive of all of those organizations, but I wanted to make sure that as a show that is primarily listened to by duck hunters, I want to make sure that they all know that Delta's out there on their behalf in Washington, D.C., in the field, conserving habitat, all of those areas. So if you're not a member of Delta, I'd recommend that you at least get on their website and take a look at what they're about and what they have to offer. And, I think it's $30 a year for a membership. You get some decals, you get a quarterly magazine, good stuff. And then they're out there on your behalf. So I'm excited to get into this.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, talking with the chairman when I signed up, a lot of the money that they make, say the fundraisers and stuff like that, stays in your local area. So, if you have a banquet, you don't ship all that money straight to headquarters and then it goes towards different projects. You benefit it right in your certain area. So if you're not a member of Delta, it's definitely something to look into and give a second thought to.
Couldn't agree more. And keeping money local, to some extent is super important too. So, this second half of the interview is shorter and it's more focused on habitat and land management and stuff. And I know that that's a question that a lot of guys, that have given us feedback, have and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to getting into that and letting you guys hear what John has to say about those sort of things. So I don't want to beat around it any further. Let's go ahead and get into it. Part 2 of our interview with Delta Waterfowl Vice President of U.S. Policy, John Devney.
Let's switch directions here a little bit. And this is coming from, we have a listeners group on Facebook. So there's a couple guys, they have their own properties and they want to attract more ducks. So, they might have a couple ponds, maybe some beaver dams in there. What are some simple things that guys can do to manage that and get ducks there? And, and what can they do to keep them there? What can they plant, any kind of habitat around that pond that would make it more successful?
Well, I think the first important thing is, nobody puts McDonald's up on dirt roads. And so, location is really important. You can manage the best food resources in the world, but unless a duck sort of flies over it, you're going to spend a lot of time and energy. So, I think it's really important before you start making an investment in duck property, make sure you're in a good place. It's got some tradition or nearby tradition of sort of, large amounts of birds. In the second question, it's really hard to answer at a very global scale, but if you're a duck, and you're a duck it's in the staging or wintering grounds, you want 3 things. And depending on where you are and when you're there, these 3 things are of variable importance. You want food, security, and love. And so food is really, really important. And food is one of the things that I think duck hunters can manage for. I think and a lot of folks will sort of rush out to try to do hot foods and plant corn and all the rest of those things. Ducks like to eat corn. But the other problem with corn is you can't, in most places, on small acreages, especially when you're dealing with sort of planting corn on the edges of water and trying to get water to it, the ducks can feed you out on corn pretty quick. What I encourage guys to think about is looking at moist soil plants. It isn't as sexy as corn. It isn't as visible as corn. But things like smartweed and barnyard grass, swamp timothy, and what's there is very dependent upon your soils and where you live and your latitude and all the rest of those things. But even something very simple like broadcast millet, the amount of food per acre produced on those little itty-bitty seeds is remarkable. And the other thing is, it depends on where you are in the countryside, but, there's been lots of studies. One of the ones I'm most familiar with is a guy did sort of a duck use days assessment on the White River National Wildlife Refuge in Arkansas, and he looked at the duck use days based on his rice and his corn and his moist soil plots. And his duck use days consistently were grossly overproduced, the lion's share of the duck use days were on his moist soil units relative to the corn and the rice. And it was only when conditions got really extreme and temperatures got really cold that those ducks showed a preference for rice and corn. Now, part of the reason for that is there's rice and corn all over that country, and they can access it anywhere. But, those sort of natural foods are really important. The challenge that a lot of guys have with natural foods, and especially to maximize moist soil production, is you need to be able to manipulate water. Now, millet's a little easier. You can broadcast millet, if most ponds and sloughs and wetlands and most parts of the country tend to sort of draw down in July and August, and you can go out and broadcast seeds of millet pretty efficiently and not at huge expense. But to get really robust stands of moist soil plants, you need to be able to irrigate that, pull water off, pull water on, and then flood it back up in the fall. And that's a lot of infrastructure and pumps and levees and dirt work and all the rest of those things to manage. But, I think the way to, if guys want to start tinkering with it, I think the thing that I quickly recommend to try is, use Japanese millet and broadcast seed it.
It's sort of every hunter's dream to be able to walk out into the back 40 and shoot limits of ducks. And although that's not always reality for a lot of people, you see stories of guys taking property and assuming they're in a decent location, as you talked about, able to create some habitat that, they're able to get some hunting and success on. But as far as in your experience and, seeing projects like this taking place, how long will it typically take, to draw huntable numbers to a new piece of duck habitat? Before you can really effectively hunt it without, pushing everything out and sort of taking a huge step back in whatever gains you might have made.
Well, that's the big challenge. So what did I say ducks wanted? They want food, they want security and love. And we've got little effect on the third one, right? So the two things we can impact are food and security. And so if you're in a good area and you've got good food resources, ducks will seem to find it. Ducks are remarkably good at finding food. And if you've got the groceries for them, they'll show up. Now, the other thing though is the challenge is to and whether you've got food or, there's certain places that ducks want to go that frankly doesn't have much to do with food. It has a lot more to do with security or a place to loaf or just sort of hang out. And I think the thing that sort of gets overwhelmed, that, once you express it in the three things ducks on the stage ring and wintering grounds need is food, security, and love. When you start thinking about that, you got to be pretty careful when you have those places that, the ducks really like to be in. I'd frankly rather have 2 really good hunts a week than have 6 crummy ones. Now that's me. I'm not a guy that gets to hunt 6 days a week. I got a young family. I got a busy job. So, my days of hunting 6 or 7 days a week are long since past. But really it's the trade-off between sort of quality versus quantity. And I think it's one of those things that, anybody that's hunted a wood duck roost, I used to have a wonderful wood duck place that I used to hunt, and I was the only guy hunting it, and it was, I could treat it, I was the only guy who was going to either benefit from it or screw it up, and I did lots of things. I never, ever, ever hunted that place in the afternoon. I rarely ever shot a duck right at legal time. I'd wait a little while, and I'd never shoot into a bunch of ducks more than about a dozen. And that gave me the opportunity to hunt that place 2-3 times a week for the 3 weeks the wood ducks were around, and I put a lot of wood ducks up in the freezer those years. But it was just sort of learning about the ducks and knowing that I couldn't put too much pressure on them that sort of taught me how I could hunt that particular place and make sure it was sort of a sustainable, durable, good hunting place.
Yeah, I think that's really important for for guys, especially who have limited access to properties and things of that nature. And yeah, you want to get out whenever you have a free chance and spend that time in the field. But if you really want to benefit on some great shoots and be able to maintain that throughout the effective season, I think some of the things that you're saying are great sort of tips and ideas to keep in mind. You mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to circle back to it. For guys that have water on the property, or they're looking to add, flood some food sources in the fall and that kind of thing. You talked about it. A lot of infrastructure can go into that, levees and pumps and blah, 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 blah. But, some guys have, beaver dams on their property that they would like to be able to draw down and maybe plant in some stuff. And, the old adage is if a beaver, as long as he can hear running water, he's going to do everything he can to stop it up. But what are some of the best ways to sort of add water to your property or effectively manage it? And is there good ways to do it without having, a great infrastructure system put into place?
I think I think if you don't want to invest in the infrastructure, you just do what Mother Nature gives you. And again, in especially in the east and but in the south and even in our part of the world, the drier times tend to be in July and August. And depending upon your sort of germination rate and head rate on this feed, you can find all sorts of derivatives of milo or millet. You can find something that will, if you can seed it in that window, will grow up and produce a heck of a lot of food in a short amount of time, and then be available when the sort of fall and winter rains come. And that's probably the easiest, is to get those big mud flats during those drawdowns, get out, broadcast seed that stuff. The other option is look at programs offered by the Fish and Wildlife Service, local, state game and fish agencies, Ducks Unlimited, that have sort of the resources and expertise. I mean, when you start getting into wetland design and what you should plant here, it's got a lot to do with hydrology. It's got a lot to do with soils. It's got a lot to do with the vegetation that's currently there. And so you really, if you want to go whole hog in that enterprise, it's best to get really good counsel from the people that are doing it every day and really have the experience. The Fish and Wildlife Service has a program called Partners for Fish and Wildlife Service we're Partners for Fish and Wildlife that does a lot of cost share agreements on developing wildlife, especially waterfowl habitat. It's a great mechanism for folks that want to start thinking about developing some waterfowl habitat.
Yeah, so are those programs? Are there resources? Are there funds available to landowners, or is that out of your own pocket to kind of do that thing?
Partners for Fish and Wildlife Service is a pretty sizable cost share depending upon the practice. The other one is NRCS, through their Wetlands Reserve Program, has a very attractive cost sharing and even some payments on the Wetland Reserve Program. So a lot of those programs that are out there, especially through the Partners Program and through NRCS's what used to be called the WRP program, it's now called ASAP. Those are programs that guys can access, and they will certainly have some skin in the game, but they won't have to bear the full brunt of pumps, levees, dikes, and all the rest of that stuff.
All right, and I know it's tough to think about, but spring is around the corner. I'm saying that as right now, I think it's like -5 at my house, and the wind chills. I mean, it's pretty chilly here. So, talk about some activities that people should be doing. Wood duck boxes, any kind of planning, anything else that can really help out around their areas.
I think one of the things that is, I love wood duck boxes, and I think some folks in the waterfowl management community sort of think of wood duck box projects as sort of nice Boy Scout projects, but aren't that meaningful in the real world. Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't have the sort of opportunities that we have with wood duck hunting today. And I think one of the things that wood duck boxes do is it really gets guys engaged in waterfowl hunting on a much larger scale. And the other thing it does is I think it gives duck hunters a much closer connection to sort of the challenges that breeding ducks face. Wood duck in, Virginia or Maryland is very different from a pintail nesting in North Dakota or Alberta. But think the connection with the birds is really important. And then I think now is the perfect time to start planning. If you've got property, and think about what you might be able to do. And it's hard to, we're all busy. We have jobs, we have kids, we got other things we like to do, lesser activities like deer hunting, or bass fishing. I think it's one of those things that I think, sitting down and making a plan right now while your experiences are fresh, from the past season, think about the opportunities, the places you've hunted, and start thinking about, what you may want to try next year. And then, that way you're making the plans, you're learning, you're doing the research, you're seeing what kind of millet's available. You go out and you buy a broadcast seeder. It's one of those things that if you wait till, August the 15th, you may forget to get a broadcast seeder or figure out where you can buy millet. So I think those planning activities, are pretty important to having good success next fall.
Yeah, we talk about it on this show a lot, and waterfowl and waterfowl hunting and just sort of the lifestyle that goes along with that can truly be a year-round thing. There's always things that you can be doing to improve habitat and scouting new areas, tinkering with decoys and equipment and all that stuff. There's always something to be done. And,
or you can live in North Dakota where we can hunt them 10 months of the year.
Trust me, I would be packing my suitcase right now, heading up there if I had the opportunity. But, the thing of it is, there's always something that you can be doing. And the good part about this time of year is, like Dan's talking about, you get that first little warm up. It feels so good to be outside. You get the family out, you get the kids involved, and, build wood ducks boxes and things. It's just this is one more reason to, get out there and take your kids out and stuff. So we definitely encourage everybody to be involved in those types of plans and activities. And I've been kicking around the idea of, getting into fly fishing and stuff. So I've spent a lot of time reading on that, and my wife looks at me like I'm crazy because she knows that I certainly don't need another hobby, because waterfowl hunting takes up a good bit of my time.
That's the second biggest sucking thing on your credit score. Take it from a guy who really loves shooting lots of birds with shotguns, but likes catching lots of fish on fly rods.
Oh, okay.
It is a great way to consume vast resources of your treasury.
Yeah, well, good thing is I seem to be all about that for whatever reason. So we'll have to talk more about that at another time. But we appreciate you coming on the show. We've covered just a ton of information, and you and Delta Waterfowl in general, just a wealth of knowledge, a phenomenal resource for us as the hunters. So I certainly want to thank you and your organization for all the work that you do and the time that you put in on behalf of all of us waterfowl hunters. It's certainly appreciated. And, I hope that the folks listening to the show learned a little something today, and hopefully took something away that they can employ maybe on their properties, or give a greater appreciation for the amount of time and the effort that goes into protecting, our resource and our ability to hunt them, as much as, you all do, and Ducks Unlimited and the other organizations across the U.S. and Canada. So we certainly appreciate that, and we appreciate you coming on the show. And we encourage everyone to check out Delta Waterfowl online. You can go to their website. There's a ton of resources on there. You guys are, all over Facebook and Twitter and the social media platforms and stuff. So, again, we encourage everyone to get involved with you. Check out the membership opportunities that you guys offer. And again, just thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And let's go ahead and do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to do it, guys. It won't be too much longer. We'll be talking about the fall flight for next year and what breeding habitat conditions look like. So it's time to turn the wheel all over again. And it's the other duck season on the prairie. It's the most important one. It's the one that is going to determine how many ducks we're going to see in the coming duck season. So we're pretty excited about seeing the ducks come back to the breeding grounds and get back to work.
Yeah, well, I can assure you that I speak for a lot of folks listening to this show that about the time that the season goes out is about the same time that I start looking forward to getting back out there chasing them again next fall. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that and all the information published and produced by Delta Waterfowl. And again, thank you so much for joining the show. We encourage everybody to check you guys out.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Again, we would like to thank John Devney of Delta Waterfowl for giving us the time that he did to come on our show and talk about a variety of different topics. And we talked about how quickly they responded to us when we sent them a letter about coming on the show. Within literally minutes, we were on the phone with John getting something scheduled, and he was gracious enough to basically give us an open door policy of any time that we've got an issue that we want to cover. Him and the Delta Waterfowl staff are available to come on this show and speak. So thank you so much to them. And we really hope that you guys, took something away from our interview with him. And if you think that there's other topics and questions that we can cover with someone from Delta Waterfowl, please send them our way and we can certainly tackle that stuff in the future. But, I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes total between the two parts of the interview. And there's just tons and tons of information that John provided. And, it's always enjoyable to talk with someone who, is as passionate about waterfowl hunting as we are and as the listeners are. So, really enjoyed our time with John.
Yeah. I mean, tons of knowledge and like you said, open door policy. He said, if anything comes up, just give him a call. And we said, likewise, if there's something that we can do at a grassroots level to help him out, we have that open door too. One thing I wanted to talk about with this, about the second part of the interview, there's so many times, and I'm just thinking like through Facebook and stuff, there's been tons of like EHD problems, and usually you see, water systems that are really low, and it just gives you a visual of like a dry creek bed or like a dry pond around the edge. And to do something for waterfowl, to go and broadcast those areas, I don't know why I brought up EHD, but anyway, it was just something that, when water levels get way down and you see just dried out areas, to go and broadcast that. And that's something so simple that you can do to bring in waterfowl to your area and keep them around. It's just something that it's simple and something I never really thought of before. So I thought that was a great point on his behalf.
Yeah, there can be a lot of gains made by just little small efforts and things, I think that is a mistake that a lot of guys make when you think about managing waterfowl habitat. You think of flooded fields and levees and, pumps and wells and all that kind of stuff that goes into it, just the infrastructure. And, that's fantastic. And if you have the means and the ability to do that, do it and then invite me for a hunt. But, like you said, broadcasting seed in some areas, that kind of stuff, just, can really go a long way. So, if nothing else, we hope we've turned you guys on to another resource that is out there for, land managers and hunters with Delta Waterfowl. So get on their website, check them out. They're on Facebook and they're on all the social media sites, and, really good people to work with, and tons of information there. So if you haven't checked out all of the stuff that Delta has, please do so. You will not be disappointed, that's for sure. All right, Dan, this is pretty much bringing us to the end of episode 25. And you got anything you'd like to announce or go over here before we wrap it up?
No, like I always say, we appreciate the listeners. We appreciate any interaction, if it's a phone call or emails or, just talking the talk. Like that's what we enjoy doing. We really appreciate it. And like you said, 26,000 downloads. And I don't know what my expectations were when we started it, really, as far as numbers. I didn't know what to think we were going to get, but it feels good, about 26,000 times I've been listened to, which is kind of weird in my head, but also it's respectable. I really appreciate it.
Yep, we'd certainly appreciate everyone taking the time to make us part of their day, and all the feedback that we get is certainly appreciated as well. Before we close out the show here, just wanted to thank the partners of this show that help bring you the podcast in part: Sitka Gear, Sport Ear, Higdon Outdoors, Big Owl Silhouette Decoys, Bison Coolers, and Backwoods Decoy Systems. If you are in the market for any of the products that these companies produce, please consider them when you're looking to make your purchase. They all, in some way, shape, or form, help bring you the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. So thank you all to them. I think that's all I got, Dan. I'm going to go and roll into this week's parting shot, and then we're going to close out the show. This week's parting shot is just a public service announcement, word of caution. We're getting to the end of the season. Everybody's kind of wrapping up. You may still be chasing, geese and that kind of thing. But as we get closer to the end of the year, do yourself a favor. Resist the urge to just throw all your gear into the trailer and button it up and close it out until, August of this summer. Take the time to pull your deeks out, clean them up, wash them off. Get your blinds out, clean them up, take care of, the decoy strings that are busted up, and just really do that maintenance piece of, to keep all your equipment functioning well and save yourself the headache and the frustration of pulling it out in August as you're getting ready for early September season and realize you got a mess. And, I did it last year. I forgot to unbrush my blinds, and next thing you know, when I pulled it out, it was all moldy and, a mouse had chewed through the door and all that kind of stuff. So save yourself the hassle. Take the few minutes that it might, take to get that stuff squared away. Grab a friend and grab a case of beer and get that stuff squared away so that when September rolls around, you guys are ready to go and you're not regretting that decision to not do it then. All right, that's going to do it for episode 25 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. Again, we'd like to thank John Devney of Delta Waterfowl for joining the show, and we hope you guys enjoyed the Hooded Merganser profile. You can find all of our stuff at hpoutdoors.com, and you can also find us on iTunes. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the show and providing us a rating and review if you're so inclined. We'd like to thank you all for listening this week. We look forward to bringing you more episodes of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. So for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.